Testing. Testing.
Should be.
Oh, okay. Maybe it's just not loud enough. Or not enough to my case.
Or like a sensitivity thing. You can.
From the computer itself, should be able to manipulate it. Yeah. It's definitely not picking me up now. Okay. Sure, there's a button somewhere.
Yeah, it's always. Do you need this extra screen, or would you prefer to just?
Oh, no, I don't need it.
No.
Oh, that's wild. I'm gonna look at my own slides. Speaking of sound, we should check the sound on the video.
Yes, the video does get sound. I am registering that we're all set.
Okay.
I'm just actually waiting for.
That's why we like to have. Yeah. Remember, they have it at this time.
The lunchtime, yeah.
No, no, this is.
Oh,
There we go. That's what I was going to do. Like an actual, because then you could still see the bar with Google and all that stuff. Now it looks nice and clean.
Okay.
And then basically the camera is capturing about this area, so in case you want to be a little bit more, you're perfectly within frame, perfectly.
Nice, I need to fight for
Okay.
Yeah.
And what do we want to do about the microphone?
The microphone is a, they were working, they were using this. Was she, or they have to use the handheld? Or do you have the lapel?
Yeah, because the lapel isn't as sensitive as that one. Just because of the location.
I'm just gonna announce the winners real quickly for the poster contest. It was close.
Was it?
We had a tie for third place. Some from Civil got it. Oh, wait, what happened? How come that's like that?
Oh, Antonio, awesome.
Let me double check. Sometimes it's just the, yeah, it's just the formatting.
Okay.
Yeah, it's, I'm telling you. Very good.
Yeah, two Civils tied.
All right, once we're done, we can transition to the other one.
Okay. Is it almost time or do we have a minute or two? Oh, we have 5 minutes, yeah. Okay. Oh, yeah. Or he said the lapel mic wasn't as sensitive as the other one.
I'm just looking at this one. Sound off.
That's.
But usually it's this in here that you're
Yeah. Oh, okay. It's just testing.
No.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, it is.
Is it coming across?
Can you guys hear it?
Well, that's true. But can you try the? Can you listen?
Let's turn this one off then and put that one on.
Right. How's the sound back there? Oh, now we're in. Awesome.
Oh, great, more of that. That's way better.
Okay, like, get out of the way. Okay, good.
the time, right? But everybody gets settled.
Yeah.
I don't know if those students are here or not.
Which, for these guys, I don't see.
Antonio's kind of tall. I did hear him give his presentation.
I know I should be able to recognize this.
Isabel gave a talk yesterday. That was really good too. Yeah, she gave it on some neighborhood where they're doing some kind of rooftop intervention to collect rainwater, and how many people would participate in it. Save water.
Right.
I went to hers. It was good.
Why it's showing on the transmission. It's showing a. You know,
Showing your Gmail.
no, it's going on.
It's very complicated, isn't it?
Very, it's not.
Really, it's gonna get an award for. I'm thinking I'm gonna have to give him a massage, MD massage after this week.
Stiff things.
There's some chairs up here,
Yeah, yeah.
and over here, there's some more chairs.
Once we're done, we'll come back in and make another change.
Looking to see if any of the students are here.
These.
Should I get started? One more minute. Okay, everyone, before we get started today with our EEB World Water Special Seminar, I just want to thank all the students that participated in the student poster session. And we did have the judges came to some decision for first place. We want to congratulate Natalia Rocho. Everyone, give her a round of applause. Second place, Jose Carbal. Are you there? Are you down, Jose? All right. Okay. And we had a tie for third place, Antonio Shabata and Isabel Lopez. Wonderful. Everybody did a great job. To collect your cash prizes, please go to the College of Science Spain desk and they can tell you how to collect your prize. And again, thanks to all the participants. We learned a lot about water in our region through the poster presentation. And you guys all did a great job. It's very close competition. As you can see, we had a time. So thanks again for participating.
Vanessa, did you want to make an announcement? Sure. Any other announcements?
Yeah, I have an announcement. There's plenty of sandwiches back here, so if you want a second one, or if you haven't got your first one, please grab a sandwich back here.
For real. Okay, well, welcome to the World Water Week keynote address, and I'd like to say Happy Women's History Month. It's my honor to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Kathleen O'Reilly, a professor in the Department of Geography and Texas A&M University Presidential Impact Fellow. And I'm introducing Dr. O'Reilly in the stead of Oprah Carey Whalen because she's delayed getting out from New York. So Dr. O'Reilly is trained as a feminist geographer, ethnographer, and South Asia scholar. She has over 30 years of experience in research on gender, water, and sanitation, interventions in rural and urban India. Over the course of her career, Dr. O'Reilly has taken on not only studying, but also solving very challenging and maybe unpopular social problems. She is perhaps best known for her research on the internal community and household dynamics as they relate to access to resources, especially clean water and toilets for women and socially marginalized groups. Dr. O'Reilly's research has brought to light the consequences to women and girls, specifically of inadequate sanitation, including fear of harassment, experiences of violence, and psychosocial stress. Dr. O'Reilly's powerful work has indeed shaped international understanding of gender and water sanitation health by applying research that is theoretically grounded and evidence-based, and further has informed policy at the international level. Her work has been funded by a Fulbright Narrow Academic and Professional Excellence Fellowship, the National Science Foundation, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, among others. So we're truly honored to have the scholar and good troublemaker, Dr. Kathleen O'Reilly, as our keynote speaker for our 2026 and fourth annual World Water Week, of which the overall topic is water, health, and gender. So please welcome Dr. O'Reilly.
Thank you, Alex, for that introduction. And I can tell the microphone is on, isn't it? Okay. Shall I say a few things?
Test the mic.
Okay.
Hello? Okay, it's just too far from my face. Is that better?
The output that.
You guys hear back there okay?
Okay. I don't. Thank you very much for coming. It is really an honor to have been invited to come and speak to you today. This is absolutely my topic for World Water Week, gender, wash, and health. It is to those three things that I have devoted my entire career. And I also want to thank you for the invitation because this campus is beautiful. I have been here once before, didn't get a big tour, but what I've seen today, like I feel very envious of what you have here. So again, thank you. I also need to thank many different organizations that have supported World Water Week. That would be the UTEP One Water Cluster, UACJ, the Centennial Museum, the local Sierra Club, Echo El Paso, and Women and Gender Studies. And additionally, the grad program in environmental science and engineering. So thank you to them as well for making my visit possible. One of the things that I love about talking about my research is that it gives me a chance to give back to the innumerable people who have helped me learn what I have learned over the past 30 years, doing feminist research on water and sanitation in India and more recently beyond India's borders. So just to be clear, what I mean by sanitation is the proper disposal of human waste. So one of the earliest research papers that I wrote on women and toilets took 3 years to get published. And the rejections of that paper were disheartening because I was convinced I had something to say, something important to say about why toilets in India might get built and not used. But no one reviewing the paper seemed to agree. However, once that paper was published, within 2 weeks, I had UNICEF in India reach out to me to come and speak to them the next time that I was in India. So finally, I was sitting down with those who design sanitation projects for the poor and telling them how gender and geography matter to project outcomes. So influencing policy was a key goal of my research then, and it still is. I do feminist research because I recognize that research is a political act, and I want to change the world for the better. I trained as a geographer because I believe that spatial relationships between people and between places are significant. I use ethnographic methods because I believe that some of the most important things we need to know are learned through engagement with people literally where they live. Details that matter and the nuances of social relationships emerge when a researcher is committed to spending significant amounts of time listening and observing people as they carry out their daily routines. So when I do my research, I'm in India for weeks or months, and I love it. When I'm not in India, I am trying to influence policy on women and sanitation through my research. For the past 30 years, as Dr. Mayer was saying, I have been working on a variety of questions related to drinking water supply and sanitation in rural villages and urban slums all over India. So I got my start doing research on WASH, meaning water, sanitation, and hygiene, like wash your hands, because I wanted to know what happened to poor, uneducated rural Indian women, like the ones you see in this picture, when they began demanding access. Nope, that's not the picture. Okay, there we go. I went too far. Okay, like the women you see in this picture, poor rural Indian uneducated women, when I wanted to know what happened when they began to demand access to a critical resource like drinking water. So I went to Rajasthan State, mapped here, worked in that orange area, still do. I wanted to understand Indian women's struggles to create change for themselves. And it led me to begin my own research program with the intent of creating positive social change and assisting with their goals if I could. Okay. That's the right one. India has changed dramatically since I went there first at age 24, traveling as a shoestring backpacker. Contemporary India has world-class cities, modern transportation systems, shopping malls for a growing middle class, and global business. It's also a nuclear power and a more prevalent player on the global political stage. The India I know best is this one, where millions of people live in bastis or slums or informal settlements. As you probably know, these are vast landscapes of homes that are not recognized by the government as legal. They have few amenities like electricity or running water in homes, and until very recently, no sanitation. These are the homes of the poor, and in India, they may sit right next to the homes of the middle class. Or, as in the picture in the lower right-hand corner, homes may be built right on the edge of the pavement. So more recently, I have been studying the relationship between the absence of sanitation in slums and its impacts on women's physical and psychosocial stress, physical and mental well-being, to put it differently. So based on my own research and the work of others, my goal today is to convince you that gender equality is fundamental to eliminating practices of open defecation. When safe, usable toilets are unavailable, men and women practice what is known as OD, or open defecation, relieving oneself out in nature so feces are left on the ground. Open defecation sites are typically 5 to 20 minutes away from where someone in a slum lives, and they're kind of set-asides that are used just for that purpose. The prevalence of open defecation has serious consequences, including loss of life, loss of health, and loss of wages due to illness. Gender is a social construction. Society has expectations for acceptable men's roles, responsibilities, and behaviors. The same is true for women's roles, responsibilities, and behaviors. Men and women are biologically different, but that has little to do with social norms about their behavior. So why is sanitation a gendered geographic problem in India? Because of gender inequality. Specifically, gender differences in visibility and mobility, gender differential access to public and private spaces, and restrictive social norms about women's privacy and modesty. Men have more freedom than women to be seen at all times of day and night going for open defecation, but women must keep their habits hidden. Men can go anywhere in public spaces alone, women cannot. So what about building community toilets in India's slums? Community toilets are shared sanitation. They are intended to be used by a specific community in a specific place. So that's different than public toilets that are open to everyone. So what about building community toilets in India's slums? Toilet construction will impact women differently than it will men. The burden of keeping open defecation invisible is on women, which causes significant physical and mental stress. An acceptable toilet could alleviate that stress. Men and women need toilets for different reasons. For example, women have their monthly periods to manage, which takes time, privacy, and water to feel cleaned. Not all households in slums have space to have an individual household toilet. So about 20% of slum residents had community toilets built for them by the Indian government through what's known as the Clean India Mission between 2014 and 2019, and that program has continued. My research is a story about if you build it, they won't come. By which I mean women and girls living in slums shunned the community toilets that were built for them by the Indian government. Community toilets, as I mentioned, they're built for a specific group. And during the Indian government's toilet building campaign, toilets were built for all households nationwide. But in slums, multiple factors prevented the building of individual household latrines. And instead, about 20% of households in slums were going to be covered by community toilets. So due to the national sanitation campaign, more Indians have toilets than ever before. But access is not use. And any toilet is not better than no toilet. So before I explain why women and girls do not use community toilets, I want to show you a short video that me and my colleagues at Sopicom during a research project made about the experiences of women living in the slums of Pune in South India. And it is a story about the absence of acceptable sanitation. So the voices that you hear in the video and in the rest of my talk, they come from that research project in the slums of North and Southern Indian cities. For many of you, this video is hard to watch and hard to hear. I've seen it at least 100 times, and it still makes me angry. And if you're feeling angry, who could blame you? It may have come as a shock to you that people are living in these conditions. The clear takeaway is the threats to women's bodies and minds that form a part of their everyday existence. We heard stories of harassment and sexual violence, the dangers of water fetching, menstrual hygiene management, and crossing railroad tracks for open defecation. In some cases, the presence of a shared toilet facility, like the community toilet, does little to nothing to relieve that burden, hence the video's title, No Relief. When safe, usable toilets are not available, when open defecation is preferable to an existing community toilet, women face what I call toilet insecurity. The term toilet insecurity has multiple gendered meanings. The first insecurity is the material reality for many women that they do not have an access to a toilet either at home or in their community. The absence of a household toilet may signal that women are not decision makers, nor do they control the finances at a household scale. Since men are both the least likely to use toilets and the controllers of household income, they are also the least likely to be convinced that a toilet is a good investment. As a woman said to us in an interview in Tamil Nadu, even if we want to construct a toilet in the house, the men say that it is not important. Behind that flowered curtain is a household toilet. I think it gives you an idea of how important it is for some families. The second meaning of toilet insecurity captures the uncertainty surrounding a woman's daily need to go for open defecation if she does not have a toilet. Every day, she faces the unknown as she makes her way to the places that she uses to relieve herself. If our research could be summarized in a single quote, it would be this one about fear. As one woman told us, the threat is always there. 3 of the 112 women that we spoke to reported being raped or sexually assaulted. Women had reason to be afraid. To cope with this fear, women commonly resorted to bodily discipline, meaning limiting or carefully timing food and drink to avoid having to go at an inopportune time. A few women spoke about fighting back, carrying stones or chili powder. Mothers of teenage girls arranged their schedules so that they were available to accompany their daughters. A few women said that if they needed to go at night, their husbands would accompany them. The third meaning of toilet insecurity includes a woman's inability to tell anyone if an incident occurs out of shame or fear of repercussions for herself or her family. We knew when we were interviewing women that most of them were simply not going to tell us if something serious had occurred. The fourth meaning of toilet insecurity is having access to a community toilet, but one that is unacceptable or a woman cannot use safely. When women living in informal settlements told us about unacceptable community toilets, they included an insufficient number of toilet seats, lack of water inside, poor quality, poor design, no locks on the doors, lack of cleanliness and maintenance, insufficient lighting, inconvenient opening and closing times, and other factors that rendered an existing toilet unusable to women. Having access to a toilet does not ensure freedom from attack or fear if the conditions of that community toilet are unsafe or so disagreeable that they force women to defecate in the open. So these two pictures illustrate the toilet insecurities that many women face on a daily basis. A community toilet that is so decrepit, it is locked, the one on the left-hand side. I cannot tell you how many community toilets in that condition I have seen. On the right-hand side is the OD grounds, the open defecation grounds, where you might be followed by a hungry pig. The foundation of toilet insecurity is due to gender, a relationship of constructed difference and subsequent inequality between men and women. An understanding of gender as created through ongoing social processes can initiate a transformation of toilet insecurity from women's problem to a gendered problem, from toilet building targets to social change. Toilet insecurity hinges on fear, shame, embarrassment, discomfort that women experience due to unacceptable sanitation. However, women's physical insecurity and mental stress is not only due to lack of sanitation. It is caused by a gendered relationship that places women in a subordinate position to men. To place the focus solely on building community toilets for women frames toilet insecurity as women's problem and misses the role that gender norms play in toilet non-usage. Women and girls' experiences of unacceptable sanitation changes over the life course as women move from young to elderly, moving through life stages. So the stages I have identified here and are about to talk about more: adolescence, newly married, mature, and elderly. It's really hard to call the famous actress Shabana Azmi elderly, even though she is 75 years old. So let me give some examples of how unacceptable sanitation changes over the life course. Family honor in India means many things, among them having daughters with reputations for purity and modesty. For this reason, girls are the most vulnerable due to toilet insecurity. Marrying one's daughter, which is a social obligation, into another family depends on her virtue or public perception of her virtue. A girl being seen talking to boys would be a cause for concern. Girls are warned against talking to boys when they are going out for open defecation or traveling toward a community toilet. Should girls go in groups together, they are instructed not to be provoked by the taunts, but to remain silent. So suffering a physical attack and that information becoming public could permanently damage a girl's reputation. As one woman said very succinctly, once a girl's reputation is lost, it is gone forever. Families go to great trouble to protect daughters from physical and verbal contact with men and boys. Mothers are usually responsible as they're the ones who are likely to be at home most often. And I will never forget one girl acting out during an interview the physical discomfort of waiting for her mother to finish chores so they could go out to the open defecation grounds. And we all know that feeling. In order to talk about newly married women, you have to understand the geographic practice of patrilocality. Patrilocality is not a word that you hear every day, but when you do ethnographic research on toilets, it's good to throw in those $100 words so that people know you're doing legitimate research. Patrilocality is the practice of a married woman moving into her husband and in-laws home after she is married. And when she does, she moves into the lowest rank of the household hierarchy, and she attends to the needs of the family members above her. She's likely to have little say in household decision-making, and her well-being depends on those who are above her in the household hierarchy. So her dependency can translate into conflict avoidance. In one of our interviews, a woman reported an incident slightly after she was married at the age of 15. She had just moved to the slum, had gone out for open defecation, looked up and saw a man standing in front of her. She did not reveal anything more to us, but she was clearly shaken. She said, "I did not tell my husband. I did not want to start a fight." We learn here that what she means is that she knew that she would be blamed for provoking the incident, that she was at fault. We also learned that the burden of preserving their reputation falls on women and girls themselves. This woman expressed anger that no one had given her any warning. And she was still angry, saying, "Even now, no one tells each other anything." Women's toilet insecurity is not just about the uncertainty of what one will face going for OD or to a community toilet. It also includes the inability to tell someone if something happens. Women in their middle years express fewer incidents of harassment or violence. Many brushed off our questions as not being of concern to them. Their social position as married, more secure in their households due to the birth of sons, perhaps having adult children, and at this point likely being well known in their slum neighborhood, generated a feeling of security, even though the conditions of daily open defecation did not change. This came through in some interviews as the normalization of insecurity. So this middle-aged woman simply said, "Teasing and watching are too normal to get worried about. It just happens, that's all." There's a lot in this statement. An acceptance that sexual harassment is such a usual part of a woman or girl's daily life that it isn't worth getting upset about. Why? Because that's just how things are and they're not going to change. She's suggesting that if you can't be secure, then at least don't let it upset you any further. Which raises the feminist question, how did women's toilet insecurity come to be acceptable to the people and communities that surround them? How did women's toilet insecurity come to be acceptable to the people and communities that surround them? This question is not rhetorical. It is an answerable question about social processes that create inequalities. And it is a question that must be answered because women's toilet insecurity does not come from having a latrine. It comes from what women fear when they have to go out for open defecation. It comes from the restrictions that they must put on their bodies. Answering the question is critical to any future planning, policy, and programming for urban sanitation. I feel so strongly right now that I have chills like up and down my entire body. For many elderly women, growing old meant a return to vulnerability due to physical weakness, ill health, and incontinence. Now, I'm not saying that all elderly women were feeble and frail, but they recognized that they didn't get around like they used to. While the elderly are generally given the greatest respects, these women were not free from violence and harassment, as you heard in the video. Additionally, leaving the house for open defecation or to go to a community toilet was reported as being physically difficult and inconvenient. Older women told us that they did not fear men and boys, but they did fear slipping, falling, and other hazards associated with poorly lit and poorly maintained community toilets. Reduced vision, hearing, and mobility meant that community toilets could be dangerous to get to and dangerous to use. Over the life course, girls and women experience toilet insecurity different, but they all live in the overarching context of unequal gender norms. While many current sanitation policies recognize that women have specific sanitation needs, like the need to squat, I want to be clear that women's toilet insecurity does not stem from their biology any more than men are biologically wired to commit acts of violence against women. Sanitation policy recognizes gender, but all too often gender means women, not the unequal relationship that favors men over women, boys over girls, and is reproduced on a daily basis through social institutions like dowry and gender norms like son preference. I don't dispute the need for urban sanitation in slums. What I take issue with is that proposed technical solutions that focus on building the right kind of toilet or the right number of toilets ignore that sanitation is a gendered problem. Shared community toilets may be the current best solution to the lack of urban sanitation in slums. But we also know that the unequal relations of power between men and women that create toilet insecurity are not going to be solved by sanitation infrastructure. Oops. My argument. Toilet security cannot occur unless gendered inequalities are prioritized above sanitation. Such a statement may seem ridiculous or radical or dangerous given the size of the open defecation problem and the havoc it wreaks on health, wealth, and life. But is it? When research makes clear that sanitation provision alone cannot eradicate open defecation, for that to occur, we must target women's toilet insecurity. We must turn the policy focus away from building toilets toward tackling the gender inequalities that create and reproduce toilet insecurity. Sanitation policies drive programming and budgeting, making their contents key to creating toilet security. Additionally, research and analysis of project outcomes is essential so that gendered sanitation policy is improved through a repeating process of implementation and evaluation. We must repeatedly ask, is women's toilet insecurity better than it was before? For whom is it better? For whom is it worse? For whom is it unchanged? So to put forward a theory of social change in a toilet security framework, empowering women is both the means and the ends to toilet insecurity. Sanitation programming must build women and girls' access to resources, skills, and a sense of inner capability. Second, women and girls have a right to toilet security. Funding is necessary for initiatives that foster women and girls' rights. Third, sanitation projects must be accountable to women and girls. Sanitation policy has the potential to change gender relations, attitudes, and norms if men and women are part of a conversation about toilet security that is beyond a conversation that fails to connect toilets to gender inequality and violence. We will not be able to tell the story of if you build it, they will come until we prioritize changes in gender relations above toilet construction. An understanding of gender as created through ongoing social processes can initiate a transformation of toilet insecurity from women's problem to a gendered problem, from toilet building targets to social change. Thank you.
you very much, Dr. O'Reilly, for such a provocative talk. I know there must be questions.
Do you want to field questions and I'll answer
Sure.
them?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm interested to know if what your knowledge is of how widespread this issue may be beyond India. And also, I'm very interested in learning from you what progress you have seen while you've been working, while you've been engaged in this over the years, decades.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that question. The largest open defecation problem in the world is in the region of South Asia, particularly India, Pakistan, and far later Bangladesh. So places like sub-Saharan Africa see those see open defecation as a much smaller problem in terms of percent of population and population numbers. Mm-hmm. So India is the focal point. Before the Clean India mission, there were 650 million people without access to sanitation. And that's a country at the time that was 1.1 billion people. And what have I seen over time? I will admit that after 30 years, it is hard to have the same conversation over and over. And when I said to you, we don't want to focus on building the right kind of toilet or the number of toilets. We want to focus on resolving gender inequality. So we move from toilet security to toilet insecurity to toilet security. I think I came to what many have told me to my face, you know, is radical, right? The talk is titled Sanitation Revolution. It is in part because that polemic is necessary to motivate policymakers that this is what has to happen. You know, that's an argument I'm going to make till the day I die. So I think the short answer to your question is that I have not seen enough change. And in some places where I have worked like literally decades going back every year, no change at all.
Thank you so much, Dr. O'Reilly. I think you made your argument so clear. That is outstanding that we're still talking about, yeah, we need to solve gender inequality to solve many of our global problems. Here we go. So I guess that because your content and argument is so clear, my question is about your process, especially nowadays. So at the assumption of your argument and your militancy is that gender is constructed and reproduced constantly. And I'm wondering how you continue to sustain your research approach nowadays in the US, in Texas, at A&M, and now this affects your experience as in your fieldwork as an ethnographer, especially now that in India there's the Modi government and a very conservative, if not fascist government. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So two dramatic things have happened, both of which pertain to an argument about gender inequality and toilet insecurity. The first, obviously, is what is happening in Texas, particularly at Texas A&M and within our country, and how we want to pretend that gender is not a thing, which, as you can tell, I fully reject. It is intolerable. And I am retiring from A&M in December of 2026 because I cannot work under those conditions. This is key to who I am and the research that I do. And if I cannot do it in those constraints, institutional constraints, then I'm going to do it elsewhere. As far as research on toilets and open defecation in India, since the Modi government has come into power, and that administration is the one that started the Clean India mission that I was talking about in 2014. That administration does not want negative things said about it. And the Indian government has always been quite controlling about the research that they allow by foreign scholars. I suspect that if I submitted the proposal that got this work funded, this was funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, they're still on board, the Indian government would reject it. It would be the kind of work that SOPICOM would be doing, but they too are under intense scrutiny by the Indian government because of their drive for social change. So it's become quite oppressive, quite repressive.
More questions?
So my question is, well, first of all, I just wanted to comment that I had no clue something like this was going on across the other side of the planet. And my interest was, why did you decide, I can't really remember if in the beginning of your presentation you did mention why you decided to make this your life's research and what got you to care so much about, this problem that's going on.
Yeah, again, thank you for that question. So I was really interested in this budding women's movement inside India, where women were rallying and organizing for access to clean drinking water. So as a feminist, I thought, well, this is really interesting, and this is, a new direction for access to clean water in India, which historically has also been an issue, less so than sanitation. So that's what I was really excited about when I was thinking about a project for my PhD. How that became my life's work is because I've talked to tens of thousands of people at this point, and the stories are like those in the video. Not all of them, it's not all doom and gloom, but speaking to people, men and women, boys and girls, about what everyday life was like, the trials, the tribulations, the successes, it was totally compelling. And I think the other important thing is that the more I invested in learning culture, history, language, the deeper I became and unable to climb out. Yeah.
Questions?
Hi.
I think your work is really great and it's really cool and it's also an inspiration for like us as a new generation. So just my question, how do you handle like the cultural differences without being like completely disliked by the people and the government, but you're also able to make a difference?
Yeah, another great question. There's always a trade-off when you do ethnographic research. And the trade-off has to be weighted in favor of listening to the voices of the people that you are speaking to and asking questions of. So some of what happens for me in the context is that I'm keeping my ideas and my feelings to myself, because it doesn't help the conversation to, blast in there like I just did to all of you. So that is part of it. And the flip side to that is having a community of men and women who are like-minded, who do the kind of research that I do, like the organization Sopicom in South India. I have that support, you know, from multiple disciplines, public health, medical doctors, you know, agriculturalists. So it spans the gamut, and that's what keeps me going on the flip side.
Hi.
Hi.
There's something that we can do in this side of the world to help.
Yeah, that is always a difficult question. The most basic answer I can give is to do what you did today and to find out that this is real. That, you know, that gender inequality is real, that people really live like this, as you said, halfway across the world. That may not feel too much like doing something, you know, you're not getting out there and digging a latrine pit, but it is powerful to be able to have this information and relate it to other things that are happening in the world and in your own life. And if you run around in ignorance, that isn't possible. So I would love to be able to tell you to, you know, run to India and do whatever you can. But in some ways, it is more important from our position here to take what we have just learned and spread that information and make connections regionally and globally. You know, India is the place with the greatest open defecation problem, but it is hardly the only place, right? We know that is true here in Texas, much as lots of people would like to pretend that it does not.
And it was a nice talk, kind of already. And also very sensitive talk. And I have a question. So we do research and we publish our work. And are we moving and progressing and helping these communities to what is the next step? And are we making the progress to make their life much better? And also at the same time, I have another question. So don't it related to the public education. So because I think most of the time, I'm from Sri Lanka, the neighboring country for India. So we see we don't have that problem. And I think education could be one of the things. And can we do a public education about what they can do? And those are, and if you can have some kind of comments on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm happy to. Okay, let me answer the first question first. So, you know, I made my career as an academic. I publish in academic journals. There's lots of pressure to do that and do a lot of it. Somewhere along the way, I was dissatisfied with the impact that my work was having in academic journals. It definitely has impact. Some journals have better readership for my particular area than others. But I also moved into report writing and getting invited and attending meetings of the World Bank, and you know, working on a project with USAID in Zambia and Kenya. You know, before USAID was. So I have definitely moved. I've tried to do both. As an academic, it's hard to be successful in both because higher education recognizes one kind of success. But you know, I'm a grown-up academic and I have to do academia the way I think is right. So that's my answer to the first question. The second question is that no. No, education will not help. You know, in thinking about your earlier question about what has changed, you know, once upon a time, talking about clean water and the health, the ill effects of open defecation on health was denied or opaque. And now that is not true. People know that open defecation is bad for health. People know that they want to be drinking clean water. Like the Indian government has excelled at educational campaigns. But my point, you in a way allowed me to reestablish my point, which is that you can build toilets, but people aren't going to use them if these other factors don't line up. You know, I gave the laundry list of what a community toilet needs to have in order for it to be considered usable. So, you know, I've met dozens of women in slums who have said, well, I wanted to use it, but now when I walk in that place, I feel like throwing up, so I don't. Yeah, you're welcome.
I have a question. How do you see the women's and girls' perception? Like they themselves see, you know, these, I guess, these patriarchy issues, and do they identify them as such? Do they see that as a problem? And is there any like, you know, are they like aware like that and support each other like that, or is something that's just not?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm happy to answer this question. India has a strong feminist movement, but it is predominantly middle class. And in less educated, poor populations, in slums, the feminist movement has not made great inroads. However, these are women and girls' everyday lives. They know what is happening, and they also feel like there is not much they can do about it. So mothers are inconvenienced when they have to rearrange the cooking schedule so they can go out to the open defecation grounds with their daughters, and they know the reason why. But the idea of going to talk to the fathers of the families of boys that harass their daughters is not on the agenda.
How much of the issue would be solved by like toilets that are faulty around and in close by places? Like I know it's not a lot around, but
Could you repeat the question?
so by having adequate toilets in those zones, how much would it help and like that they're maintained?
Yeah, it's a really important question that has to be answered. I recently wrote a paper on this very thing, and the answer is it's mixed. Toilet cleaning, we can't have a conversation about the importance of caste in India, but toilet cleaning is a major hurdle to toilet use. And toilet cleaning is an extraordinarily difficult job to get people to do. So again, that is a much, much longer conversation. But directly, if toilets are clean, well lit, have locks on the doors, you know, if they meet that criteria, then women will use them. And if they are close by, they will use them. And yet, as a geographer, being interested in space and location, where the community toilets get built, don't take that into consideration. So again, speaking about academia, you know, there's a recent paper about the community toilet that was built on the far end of the slum, which meant that all the women on the other end of the slum who happened to have children never made it. You know, their kids just couldn't make it. So that was, you know, continuing the practice of open defecation. So lots of bad decision making and a serious historical social norm about who is going to clean toilets and mostly who is not.
Hi, I'm curious to know what the residents of India their opinions are on the issue because we have our opinions from here, from across the sea, but I'm also curious to know what the residents think and how class and gender play a role into it. Because like, for example, you showed us that the mature woman who lives in the slum, she just accepted it. And you showed us earlier that the slums can also be built next to middle class, and I'm sure people complain about it, or how the wealthy might be able to complain about how people relieve themselves outside and how that's a health issue and how it also smells, or how gender can also play a part into it. I'm sure many men wouldn't care about this issue specifically. Well, I'm taking a guess here, but I'm curious to know what the residents.
Yeah, yeah. So one thing to know is that Indians think differently about poor people than we do here in the United States. I always say Americans despise poor people. In India, I wouldn't say that. It's the poor are integrated into society fully. The separation that we have here is not the same. Do the middle class think the practice of open defecation is disgusting and unhealthful? And do they call people names and throw rocks and yell at them through loudspeakers? Yes. All of that happens. There is a penalty, a social penalty for needing to go for open defecation. As far as gender and class go, I wouldn't say there is a tremendous difference. That if I'm understanding your question right, I would say there isn't a tremendous difference among the middle class women and men and how they think about open defecation in slums. I would say that that is pretty much on par. The difference is that men go for open defecation at any time of the day or night. You can have your bum hanging out. And of course, women aren't seen doing it. So that would be the most significant difference, is that middle class families would see men and they wouldn't see women. Yeah.
Hello. I had a question on, well, I had two questions.
Okay.
My first one was what it looks like when you go to India, like in a day of your work. Like
Oh,
what
yeah.
you literally do.
Yeah. Okay. This is a question that I love to answer and very seldom get asked. So one of the things I'm known for is just marching into a village with my research assistant of 22 years and saying, "Hi, we're here to ask you about your toilets." And people say, "You came all the way from America to ask about our toilets?" Really? And then the rest of the day would be spent going from household to household and asking women and girls if we can talk to them, having tea, maybe having lunch. Usually it's blistering hot because it's happening in the summertime. And that's kind of a day in the life. We'll go out, we'll spend as much time as we can, talk to people until they're like, and then we're on our way. Yeah.
And also, when you showed us the two pictures of like modern India and like the less modern India, I was wondering if you like what the government of India thinks about how it would, like where the money goes. Like, is it a lot of funding that gets put into fixing this issue, or no?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no. There are lots of reasons why amenities in slums have not been upgraded. The most fundamental of which is that the government is hoping that they don't provide amenities, people will leave. Okay, well, of course, that never happens. They have built resettlement colonies, and they have forced resettlements. That costs a great deal of money. But those apartments don't have working toilets. Those apartments are too far on the outskirts of cities for people to be able to work. So they simply take that apartment and then move back into the central city where their jobs are. So some money is being spent. And then, you know, the images of modern India, that is, I'm not saying that the Indian government doesn't spend money, but most of what we see as modern India, rich India, consumerist India is private. Private shopping malls, private roads, private subway, and so on.
I have one question. Like when you go and speak to them, how does that influence your work?
Who's them?
Oh, sorry. The residents of the slums.
Yeah. Well, you will realize how sentimental I am, but we cry a lot. And when women talk about their struggles, it is terrible to only be able to say, I'm going to do everything I can from the position that I am in. I am going to talk to your leadership, which I do. I'm going to talk to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which I do. I'm going to get the word out there as much as I can. And sometimes that feels really lame. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Thank you.
Great talk. This might be a bit of a taboo question because I know the caste system has been outlawed for a number of years in India. But given the different societal and class-based issues going on and how in the US things like redlining still affects things today, how much of this problem do you think is a historical consequence of the caste system and of the separation of the classes like that?
That's a tough question to give an answer that isn't like as long as a course. And I am an academic, so it's very hard to keep things this short. The role that the caste system plays is huge. And you know, caste is illegal, but it's widely practiced. It's practiced here in the United States. And so that is definitely an issue. Religion is a factor. I have some colleagues at Emory, they're public health scientists, and they are interested in the Hindu, Muslim, Christian divide in practices of open defecation. And the burden is mostly on Hindus. Muslims and Christians have far lower rates of open defecation. And that, of course, in modern India creates a great deal of friction because there's a great deal of tension in the country right now between Hindus and Muslims. I don't feel confident to say to you right now if we found a solution to caste inequality, we would solve the open defecation problem. Not like I have the evidence for gender inequality. But there's no doubt that it is a factor, and it is especially problematic because we're not supposed to be talking about it. You know, to go back to education, you know, everyone in India knows that you're not supposed to talk about caste. You know, but in rural India, the first question I'm asked after Will you have tea is what caste are you? So no one in an urban area is going to ask that. But India is more than 50% rural, and caste is alive and well in both locations. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Just had a general question of, you touched a little bit on how like culture and society make solution complicated, and I appreciate that you said that often in developmental kind of or international development talks, very structural mechanistic solution, like just toilets crossing, to the problem and then solve it. In my experience as an individual, the positive outcomes are also individual basis, like I'm wondering if you could share memorable or positive experience that you've had at the individual level. Like maybe it's a good way to kind of.
Okay, so like a story that I've heard in the field or something?
Yeah, something that you've maybe been a part of that, this is a complicated problem, but you really be able to positively affect an individual.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate this opportunity. Yeah, thanks. So in one Indian state, together with the governments, women have effectively organized to keep those community toilets in the condition that they want them. And some of how they do that is with the help of a local organization that has been on the ground for decades, which is very important, right? It's not some kind of fly-by-night nonprofit. This is an organization that is well known. And the assistance that the local government gives is water, supplies for cleaning, septic tank emptying, because most community toilets empty into a septic tank. And women have taken on, in agreement that it's going to be shared responsibility. The women within the communities have decided, well, we want these toilets and they need to be like this for us to use them. So if we have this kind of support, we can do it. And it's not easy, but when you walk into these kinds of community toilets, you want to use them. I mean, all of us in this room would be more than happy to walk in and, right, this is exactly what it ought to be. It's open until 11 p.m. It's open at 5 a.m. so I can get up, take care of what I need to take care of, and go to my job. I'm not rushing. There's not a long queue. There's always water in the tanks. Again, that's what the local government does. So this partnership and a willingness on all sides to continue that kind of support has really made a difference. And other informal settlements in this particular town have taken an interest because of its success.
Hi. I think your work is very, very interesting. It's very important. I know you said that for like the past 30 years, you've been fighting the same fight and you haven't seen a lot of progress in many places. But I was wondering where you've seen the most progress and what that progress has looked like.
Yeah. Okay. I have worked in almost every Indian state at this point of my career, except all the places that foreigners are not allowed to go to, which is more than a few. The places that have had the most success are cities are smaller cities where the government is intent on being engaged. So I wouldn't even necessarily say where there are great cultural differences, but rather that the politicians in these places understand both the, political aspects of this is how I get reelected, but also the aspects of civil responsibility. So this particular town that I was talking about and the government, stepping up to do that is that kind of place. So a lot of it is about location and the political will of those who are in power at that moment. And certain key government officials can really make a difference and have. So that, so individual leadership can also be important. Does that answer your question? Were you thinking of other things?
Yeah, I was wondering what that progress looks like for those communities, and then I guess, do you think that those communities where progress has been seen, could they be used as examples whenever you are fighting for communities where the leadership isn't as involved?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so absolutely. Those examples circulate, and I wish that there were more of them. And okay, now I've forgotten the second question.
So, just like those, I just wondering like what the progress looks like in
Right.
those communities can act as examples
Yeah.
for fighting for other.
So when the Clean India mission started and the Indian government announced that it was going to spend billions of dollars building individual household latrines for every household in India that didn't have one, the optimism, except from people like me, was intense. And some of what has repeatedly not happened is that this money was spent, the proper kind of toilet wasn't built, they fell into disrepair, and this is both community toilets and individual household latrines. I know we wanted to end on an up note, but I have been to hundreds of villages where that has been true, and all this money got spent, but people aren't, they may have a external structure, but they don't have a latrine that they're actually going to use. And in the places, again, where it has worked, it has been dedication on the part of local leadership to pursue the project in the way that it is supposed to be done. So people do get well-constructed latrines, and they do have a water source that they can count on so they can flush the toilet. And that village or district, might be smack dab in the center of districts or other villages that didn't do that at all. So of course you wonder, like, well, why did this happen here? And my experience has been that it's about the local political leadership.
We're gonna keep it here.
Yeah.
I have a follow-up from what Carlos asked, and we talk to the men too in the household. So how are your encounters with the men and boys?
Mm-hmm. So talking about toilets, fine. Talking about bodily functions, not fine. So I've had lots of conversations with men about toilet construction, about community toilets, individual household latrines. And then the moment we want to start talking about, the problems that women are facing, the curtain comes down. So there have been efforts to target men and boys, and some have been successful. But when I go into villages to talk to women and girls about their experiences, I have already constructed the barrier for men wanting to speak to me. So that is definitely a flaw in what I do. And in a way, I feel like if I wanted to speak to men in certain locations, then I couldn't expect to get much information from women. And the other thing I would say is that in the villages that I've been going to for 30 years, people cut me a lot of slack. And they also are totally ready to lie to my face in the nicest way. Yeah.
Any more questions?
One answer. So I know that we can approach a problem from many different angles, and we can find I just imagine like a objective solution, but do they themselves, the people that are facing this problem, have an idea of what fixing the problem would look like through their lens?
Yes, and some of it is those very simple, what seem like simple material fixes, lights that turn on, a tank that there's always water in. So when we ask women about why they don't use latrines and why they would, it comes down to those things and less so about, men and boys changing their behavior. In part because the things that women are enumerating, as you saw in the talk, are safety features. They're more or less all safety features, with the exception of cleanliness. But of course, that ends up being a safety feature because if the community toilet isn't clean, then women are going to go for open defecation. So that is what people talk about. These very practical kinds of solutions. And given their experience, those are the solutions that seem like the low-hanging fruit. Changing gender inequality. I'm an American.
Let's thank our speaker.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
I just wanted to announce that we do have a film over at the Centennial Museum at 3:30. I think that's the next event that's on this side.
That's fantastic.
Yes,
you have another presentation.
Yeah.
And then
Good. I'm glad you're.
Yeah,
Of course, yeah. That's what I kept thinking is we really lucked out.
Thank you.
That's the,
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
yeah.
Julian, thank you for making all of this
No
work.
problem.
I just started in and I was like,
I'm glad
I don't
you
have to
seen
think
this.
about this. I just have to click the clicker at the right
I'm glad.
time.
Very
interesting talk. Thank you.
Yeah, thank
I
you for
was-
coming.
On the question on sub-Saharan Africa,
Yeah.
maybe percentages are there, we're not there, but colonial tribesmen is all open definition.